So yeah, let's just get this started. So this session, this week's session is going to be with Thomas. Thomas is a software engineer at Dusk, but what a better way to find out about Thomas than getting some info from him. So Thomas, can you actually do a little introduction to the community? This is actually your first time getting introduced to the community, right?
Yeah, that's the first time that I've spoken publicly here on behalf of Dusk to a community. So hi everyone, I'm Thomas. I'm neotemandur on GitHub, as you might have seen if you're checking the repositories. I'm mainly a software engineer at Dusk for Rust. I'm from Germany, and I've been into financial stuff and technology already for quite some time, especially crypto. So my first encounter, for example, with Bitcoin was in 2013. I got into smart contract programming around 2018 on Ethereum with Solidity. And yeah, I've also dealt with DeFi privately, be it now, for example, Uniswap, or also the predecessors that have been there before the AMM DEXs came to be, like, for example, eDEX or EtherDelta. I've been also investing in crypto myself, using exchanges. So basically, I've dealt almost with the full vertical of crypto, be it now from a financial technology or user perspective.
That's awesome. So you have quite a long list of things you were experienced in, and you've been in the space for a very long time. 2013. That's a very long time for it to be in the space and to be familiarized with the DeFi space as well. So that's really cool. And can you tell us a little bit of what specifically do you currently at least work on at Dusk? Because we know that you have dabbled in quite a lot of different things and worked on a lot of different aspects on Dusk. But what are you currently mainly working on? Just so the community has an idea.
Yeah, I'm mainly being most often the person who's jumping between different projects. Currently, I'm pretty much involved in DuskEVM and also the products that we want to push onto the chain in the future. So it's also about all the stuff like tokenization, RWAs, etc., which then relates to obviously smart contract programming, also the programming of the products, the web portals, etc.
Sweet. Yeah, that DuskEVM is a hot topic right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're all very excited to see it in action, but we hear it's quite close, so we're very excited for it. Now we could get in a couple of questions, so we can start it, a little bit slow. We do have a couple of questions that are more related, less, not necessarily on a personal level, but let's just start it light. So the first question that we got from the community was more so about your previous working experience. So what clients did you work for, and what things did you work on before joining Dusk?
That's an interesting question. So I don't think there are any really noteworthy clients to mention, except for names that nobody knows, like private names of people. I've been mostly working as a software engineer and consultant for smaller freelance jobs from time to time, and focusing mostly on my own projects that I did back then, which were also not really B2B or B2C focused. So it was like I've been very much shortly before joining Dusk working mainly on trading bots that I've used myself on crypto markets. Be it, for example, some simple arbitrage trades, so also some automation with a bit more sophisticated strategies on derivative markets. Yeah, that's basically most of my previous experience. So IT consultancy and software engineering. And most of the time it was also doing and trying out own projects before I made the decision to actually join another company where there were already a lot of people in place, a lot of stuff in place. And then it somehow came to be that I joined Dusk. And that's also probably a lot more interesting to talk about.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, can you tell us a little bit of what attracted you at Dusk? What were the reasons that you're interested in joining Dusk, and how has your experience been so far?
My interest in joining Dusk wasn't really there at the beginning, basically because I didn't know about Dusk or Dusk crypto in general before, and I got forwarded by someone else and didn't actively found Dusk myself. And the interesting part though is I've been applying at Dusk then for a software engineering role as a Rust developer. I sent them my GitHub, etc., and then they saw some of my open source Rust projects and invited me for a first call. And the first call was with Emma, actually. And we were having some talks, and then he got into the topic of Rust programming a bit and also technologies they've been using at Dusk, for example, like BLS signatures, and asking me about BLS signatures and if I'm knowledgeable about that. And luckily, I got some sort of background in cybersecurity. I'm not the absolute expert about it, but I could tell him a little bit about it. And then we also quickly got into the topic about him explaining me the mission of Dusk and what they're actually building, what the purpose of the blockchain is. And I think that was also the moment where it clicked, because I fully understood what Dusk is aiming to do. And I could only agree with him about how traditional finance infrastructure is utterly archaic and obsolete, and also inferior to all things related to distributed ledger technology. So I was telling him also an example on my side, how I was really confused about the fact that when you come from crypto trading to a traditional exchange where you would buy and sell stocks, how high the fees are, first of all, but also how intransparent everything is, because you have much less access to public data. The fees are way too high, and there are so many intermediaries in between, like the clearinghouses, etc., that are also taking a cut of every trade. And then let alone talk about the UIs that look like they're 50 years old, right? So I think at that point, both he and I think I can take the liberty of speaking for Emma here, that both he and me knew already that Dusk is very much a good fit for me to join. And related to my experience, I think it's been very insightful. I've been involved in a variety of things already. I've dealt with a lot of people at Dusk, which are also all incredibly smart and friendly, so it's really enjoyable to work with them. And I think the use case that Dusk has, in my opinion, in the context of blockchains is currently one of the most interesting and impactful ones among all other use cases that you can have in crypto, because there is a real improvement on existing infrastructure that you can do here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's also what I can really relate to what you're saying, because that's also something that clicked with me when I first had my interview with Dusk, and seeing how big of an impact what we're doing at Dusk now could have on the financial market and system. It really clicked with me that there isn't a lot of other projects that are trying to change, not to change, but to change the financial market, but also to create something that's so impactful in the space. Most of them are, of course, it's a business. Everyone's trying to make money, but not a lot of them are trying to have this bigger vision that Dusk has. So I can relate with that a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you for the little intro. That's very insightful to know, and it's great to hear. Now, getting into some of the questions that we got from the community, someone has an interesting question. So someone said that I wanted to develop something small that utilizes Dusk, but I'm unsure if I have to develop natively or for DuskEVM. I have no prior experience in developing any blockchain-related tech, but I wanted to see if I can understand Dusk better if I try to develop something using Dusk. Any recommendation for starting points? I have seen the Dusk Forge created by Hein, which makes contract development much easier as far as I understand. Of course, I can ask this question to some AI, but I wanted to hear, from you as an experienced developer at Dusk.
Okay, so Dusk Forge indeed makes contract development on Dusk, which is now DuskDS, easier. And there were also blend features in there which should have further simplified it. But I would say in most cases, especially with our plan moving forward to some sort of modular architecture, in most cases you want to develop for DuskEVM, which is going to be the primary application and execution layer for now. And there are a few cases, I would say even less than 10% at the moment, where you would want to do something on DuskDS. One example would, for example, be facilitating liquid staking, because the consensus and the provisioners, they all run on DuskDS still. So if you want to have some sort of wrapped variant that is staked and you want to do a provider like that, then you would go for DuskDS. But in a lot of other cases, you want to go for DuskEVM. And there's a lot of tooling already for EVM, as it's nowadays a very much hugely adopted de facto standard. So you have also a much easier time learning and finding resources in the internet about it, because when you are looking at a tutorial for writing a smart contract on Polygon, on Ethereum whatsoever, and you are able to successfully follow the steps there, it's basically just a matter of switching out the actual network to deploy such an application then to DuskEVM.
Yeah, that of course that makes sense. It's much easier for developers to develop something on DuskEVM than on DuskDS because it's familiar tooling, and that's also a big advantage of DuskEVM on top of all the other things. So makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Thomas. Now there's another interesting question, and I'm curious to see what your point of view is on this from the development standpoint. But what would you say has changed the most since mainnet has launched? A bit of a broad question.
Yeah, that is indeed a really broad question. I would say we are much more product focused now because we now have already a chain out which is live, which is running. So the next obvious step is putting out products, bootstrapping a chain into a proper ecosystem. So I think what's changed the most now is obviously that we are focusing on DuskEVM, and that we are now not only anymore maintaining an infrastructure and developing it, but actually also developing products that are being deployed on the chain that users can use, that will hopefully thrive and attract liquidity and user activity.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks. That's a good summary. The next question is going back to DuskEVM. Can you describe how DuskEVM came into view and gained ground at Dusk since you joined? Also from your personal perspective, assuming you are/were more of an EVM guy.
Yeah, it's true. I am more of an EVM guy, but that's not necessarily because of the EVM or because of Ethereum, but basically because Ethereum was the first smart contract platform that was more or less disruptive enough to gain traction in 2015, 16, 17, 18, etc. I think I have to give the credits for DuskEVM, like this idea about having some sort of EVM chain, to Hein, because he had this idea and threw it in another context, which was about getting bridges and easier exchange integration. And I think the idea more or less came to be throughout the last month, but also last year already, that this idea came up again and again in multiple different variants of how it would be deployed, because in any kind of scenario, there was always some sort of advantage with it. And I think because the idea stayed and came up again in different contexts, at one point it was actually a viable way to take and to do. And throughout all of those conversations where I've been involved, I've been obviously a massive supporter for this idea, and also any previous variant of this idea, because I think this now direction towards DuskEVM is a really, really bullish step in my opinion.
Can you actually, I want to hear more from your point of view, because I also agree, it's definitely a very big bullish step, and the idea, this modular architecture idea was only solidified even more when we got in touch with different institutions and partners, and we realized how easier it would make life in terms of integrations, listings, and everything else. But I'm also curious to get more from your side on why you think it's bullish, although we know most of the things, but just want to get your point of view on it.
From my personal experience, I think we are currently in a phase in the crypto market where it's not only about developing chain, actually there's this term around which is always called killer apps. So when you have a new chain, it's not only about having a chain, but having products on that chain. So I think personally that if you are a new blockchain company, or if you're a blockchain company in general, and you're building your own blockchain product, every hour you spend on writing infrastructure and solving problems that have already been solved in some sort of way is an hour that you could have also spent on writing actual applications on the chain that bootstrap a chain into an ecosystem, thrive user demand, pump the TVL whatsoever. And I think we are at a spot where we see that the EVM ecosystem in general is very much adopted to a degree that you could say that it's some sort of standard next to Solana and other large chains. But when you look at the largest chains that are currently out there, You have Binance Smart Chain, which is EVM compatible. You have Polygon, which is EVM compatible. You have Avalanche C chain, which is EVM compatible. And then you also have all those layer 2 chains like Arbitrum, Optimism, whatsoever. And if you would summarize all of them together, then you have an ecosystem of billion-dollar companies with thousands of developers that are actively contributing to this standard to a degree that there is tooling around. There are languages being developed. There are explorers. There are already apps that can be redeployed on different EVM chains, that you have such a huge advantage by adopting such a standard for your application layer that you cannot just ignore it. And you have a much faster time to market with so much things, to a degree that even if you would say you want to make an even better infrastructure in the future, it's still a logical step, in my opinion, to have a faster time to market by adopting already a well-defined standard that is good enough for the time being. And then you can improve upon that after you have already enough activity going on. Otherwise, you are going to conduct research for an even longer time. And I think, especially in crypto, where markets can change very quickly, you are not necessarily in a good position when you are just taking so much time, because when you're researching something for, let's say, another 3 years, it could be that in 3 years the whole space looks already different. And when we look at Ethereum in 2015 or Uniswap at a version 1, it's all about just getting something out already. And to me personally, everything that contributes to getting something out faster is, in my opinion, a completely logical and bullish step to do.
100%. Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And like you mentioned, the crypto space is so dynamic. It changes so fast, and having the ability to be flexible as well, and choose the right direction, which makes sense and helps just deliver faster, is 100% the right thing to do, and it makes a lot of sense. And it reminds you of like the 80-20 rule, right? Put 80% of your effort into the 20% that gets you the most benefit, right? So why?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about being pragmatic.
Exactly. Nice. Thank you. Thanks, Thomas. Now, some users in the community, some members in the community are also wondering if about the security aspect of DuskEVM. So someone's asking, I want to know how confident you are about the security of the new modular structure. I assume it's easier to attack DuskEVM. Is that a concern to the team at this stage, or it shouldn't even be a concern? What do you think?
I don't think it's easier to attack. I'm also not quite sure how you came to this conclusion, but the EVM in general is secure if you look at it. I'm also not really able to answer a question without like more specific information. Now, whether you're referring to, for example, MEV protection or the EVM security in general, consensus, or if you're talking about the cryptographic security or the settlement, because, I mean, when you're talking about security in general, there are a lot of components that are security critical in cryptocurrencies, but I think in the context of DuskEVM, I'm not really concerned about the security of the systems. They are largely audited. DuskDS is going to be secure because that's basically Dusk at the moment, and it will be even more secure and even easier to reason about because we will simplify certain parts. Our DuskEVM currently is based off Optimism, which is audited, so this system is also very secure. I don't think that there's any reason to say it's easier to attack at the moment, and so in my opinion, I'm not really concerned about the security. I think that's all pretty solid.
Superb. Yeah, I think that answers the question quite clearly. And you also mentioned in the past, I remember Hein mentioned that DuskEVM is quantum resistant, right? Or at least some aspects of it.
Well, yeah, it's technically quantum resistant when you're talking about the settlement process, because you're not incorporating zero knowledge proofs in the settlement, but you have the fault proof game from optimistic rollups, and because it's quantum resistant because you do not even use cryptography that is not quantum resistant for the part of settlement and proving that the transactions are being done correctly.
Right.
But if you're talking about the cryptographic keys, for example, obviously that's another topic, but this is only in the context of the settlement per se.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that makes it quite clear. Fun fact, guys. Also, I don't think you guys know it. I know a few people in the community were wondering who the other mystery person was that went to the London trip and who was in the picture of Hein and Ryan. Well, that was actually Thomas. So someone asked, if you can tell us a bit about the London trip, if there's anything you can tell us in terms, from the perspective of a developer of what happened there. I know we can divulge too many information about, who we talked with, who we met, but maybe there is some sort of nugget you can tell us from that trip.
Yeah, so I was indeed the mystery person, if anybody asked themselves who that was. I'm not really able to tell much about it in terms of concrete details, but I think it was very insightful. We've met very motivated people there, well aligned with our mission, and we are progressing forward with them currently quite well. And we came to a lot of very positive conclusions, especially with regards to DuskEVM and our planned products there, and especially also how they can be as accessible as possible to the user base. I think that's all I'm able to say without spilling the beans too much.
I think that's plenty. That's more than I expected. So I like to hear that. Thanks, Thomas. Now let's see. I also see that there is before we get to the last question that I have on my list. I see that we also got a question in chat from Raingon, and the question is, well, about the when part. I'm not sure we can answer that yet, but when will be listed on tier 1 exchanges? Is there any plan in place? We can probably answer the when later on. But is there anything you can
I think you're referring to native listing. I think you're referring to the listing of native Dusk. I think there will be a much faster process in terms of listing native Dusk once DuskEVM is out. Because if you're talking about native listing, there's currently, I think, Scandex, which natively lists Dusk DS, and most of the other exchanges have either the ERC20 or the BSC20 variant. But I think it's fair to say that you can get a listing of DuskEVM fairly easy on an exchange, as the technology, as already said before, is a de facto standard, so they have already all the systems in place and they just need just a few parameters instead of getting their development team on it and develop their own deposit, withdraw, cold storage, whatsoever solution, or ask us for some sort of integration there, as it's already a standard that's well implemented. So I think we will see some nice development there once DuskEVM is out, and then we can see how we can progress with that.
Right. So yes, indeed, getting listed on exchanges is much easier now with DuskEVM. And the EVM Dusk is going to be the main one. We're probably going to push for listings. I think that the question was more around bigger exchanges that would get Dusk listed. And the answer to that is that, yes, we are in talks with quite a lot of different exchanges. We can't name them yet, but after DuskEVM is out, we will be able to proceed with with the talks with all the different exchanges we're in talks with. In terms of the when, soon. But yeah, it's we are in talks, and there is a plan in place. Now, the last question, which is not necessarily a question, it's more so a suggestion, let's say. But I'm not sure how much of an influence you would have on this, Thomas, but I am curious to get your thought on the mechanism that someone is recommending here. So someone is asking, can you please help Emma develop a token burn mechanism for Dusk? I really think this is a very important mechanism for the health of a blockchain. What do you think about that suggestion?
I think a token burn mechanism is very interesting, but to further generalize it, I think any kind of mechanism that gives more utility to Dusk itself as a token is a very nice mechanism, now be it burning or any other kind of reward distribution or participation when you hold Dusk. I'm also a fan of it, so I would indeed help if there's the opportunity to it, and I would also indeed share this opinion within Dusk for any kind of development that's going on there, because I very much think that utility in the blockchain and the applications that you have, the more utility a token has, the better it is, the more raison d'etre you have for such a token in general. So I completely agree with the person asking this question. I think it's a very important mechanism in general when you're talking about adding more and more utility to a token. And obviously, if there would ever be some sort of implementation need for that, I'm directly jumping on it.
Heck yeah, I'd love to hear that. And I mean, I couldn't agree more. The more utility you can add to a token, the better it is for the overall project, right? But token at least.
Yeah.
And I believe Emma mentioned in a previous Team Hangout that it is something we are looking into, at least considering, depending on the different apps that get launched on Dusk and how exactly it could be implemented based on each specific use case or like project or the app or anything. Yeah. So it's great to see that it's a consensus within the team, at least with you as well, on its importance. And now we
definitely, and I can also say,
please go ahead.
I can also say that obviously when we are talking about products on Dusk, now obviously this is also my private opinion, I'm always actively looking into any kind of ways how we could add more utility to Dusk when we are now looking at products that we want to develop for DuskEVM, because to me that's an obvious step that you want to take if you want to develop such applications.
100%. Yes. Exactly. Couldn't agree more. Felix is asking, Thomas, in what time frame after launch would you expect tangible real usage / users to hit DuskEVM and killer apps? Or in terms of the time frame, I guess it's kind of hard to say, but I guess the way I would reframe this question would be, with what do you see the most users to come and join DuskEVM would be? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard talking about timeframes. I don't like talking about timeframes. I'm also not the person making them up or setting them, so I'm not really the right person to ask that. But I think when we're talking about users getting into the chain, we need to think about what is the USP of DuskEVM, and the USP of DuskEVM is going to be tokenized RWAs and in the future also native issuance. And this will be the pull factor that users want to see and how users come into the ecosystem. And obviously we are being in talks with launch partners, we are being in talks with other DeFi projects that can, thanks to DuskEVM, easier redeploy their infrastructures on Dusk. And our goal is to get those products that we can offer also through NPEGs as soon as possible out after we have DuskEVM ready, as basically all, this is again in my opinion, those products will be the thriving pull factor which can bootstrap the chain into a thriving ecosystem of having money flowing in, users buying stocks, selling stocks, whatsoever, and also the TVL, which is then growing and making it more and more viable for potentially also DeFi apps to be deployed, as there is suddenly capital demand from TradFi ecosystems on a chain, which is very much different than capital demand that you see on other chains where it's just capital demand for flash loans and other kind of loans to buy other cryptos. But you have suddenly the door open to a whole other financial system, and I think this will definitely thrive the user demand and bring people in. Especially in the context that DLT makes everything there much more efficient. So speaking of the fees, etc., in the future, this is just magnitudes of order more modern than architectures that everybody is used to in terms of normal banking infrastructure. If you're having a securities account at your local bank or even at some new fintechs.
Right. Yeah. I think that gives quite a good idea around what the future we're looking towards, right? The next question which just came through, well, you already answered the first part, so I'm just going to skip to the second one, but I'm not sure if you have anything to say in this regard, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Maybe you do have some sort of context, but someone's asking, what is the status of EuroQ?
EuroQ?
Right.
I'm not really in the loop about that at the moment, but I would say that almost everything that's being in the pipeline is related to also that DuskEVM needs to come out. And as soon as DuskEVM is in a state that it is getting out, or shortly before getting out, now that testnet is coming out, we can actually, I think, with a lot of partners, progress forward with conversations about doing testnet deployments, etc., of certain applications. So I think if there would be any updates coming out, that would be in the near future when testnet is out and some partners and we also ourselves are already trying out the infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly.
But obviously, when we are going to launch a chain, it's obviously necessary that we need a stablecoin, as a stablecoin is bootstrapping the liquidity of any kind of DEX whatsoever, or almost any other application. You need to have some sort of settlement currency. So I think that's also in the top priority list to do. I would expect it would come rather quickly.
Yeah. Most probably going to be something quite important to have for the first dApps that would be launched on DuskEVM, for example. Well, it seems that those are all the questions that the community has asked so far. I would like also to ask you if there's anything else, since you are currently working on DuskEVM. Is there anything else that you already quite went over a couple of aspects of DuskEVM and the benefits and everything else, but is there anything else you would like to add on DuskEVM or any other topic for that matter before we end this session?
Yeah, I'm looking very positively towards DuskEVM. I mean, it's probably already quite clear that I'm very positive towards EVM infrastructure and this kind of standard due to the various advantages. And I think it will be definitely a very interesting time in the next month, especially when we are going to progress forward with our products, because there will be real use cases, there will be real stuff that you can actually do on the chain. And I myself am definitely also going to use them. So I'm also personally really, really anticipating that we get something out there and that people can use it, because that's going to be awesome.
100%. Yes. So excited for what's about to come. It's it's what we've been waiting for. It's seeing everything in action. So it's going to be an exciting couple of months ahead. Not, the next month, but all the months that are coming afterwards are going to be quite exciting. Well, that makes, that ends the list of questions that I have. So unless there's anything else, I don't see any more questions in chat. So I think, we're at the half-hour mark, just above that. I usually like to keep these between 30 and 45 minutes. So I think we got a pretty nice session here. Thank you so much, Thomas, for joining us on this session. I think it was a really fun chat. The community had a great opportunity to get to know you. Of course, anytime. Would love to get you back on in future sessions as well, especially.
Of course.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. And guys, like always, the chat is being recorded, so I'll upload the recording on YouTube most probably tomorrow, alongside a summary for anyone that couldn't make it today. I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you for taking the time to join us and get to know Thomas a little bit more. So thank you. Thanks to everyone that came in, and thank you, Thomas, for coming.
You're welcome. Have a nice day, all.
Take care, everyone. Have a good one.